Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you with us here. We got a big show planned for you today. Got our guy Joshua Perry, big time contributor on this show. Took the reins while Schlegs was out. Going to work him in on a regular basis. He'll be joining us here in about 10, 11 minutes. Excited to have him talk a little bit about some college football. We've got some big news around it. You know, some of the best players in college football. We've got some news about redshirt Schlegs that I didn't necessarily know about. There's a nice big Thursday slate that we'll be able to dive into, maybe preview some of that in the headlines edition of who's going to be playing there and how that's going to look. And then as well, we're going to start off the show with this, Schlegs. Actually, before we get into that, I got one more thing, because we're going to get into the Stalions documentary, which I know a lot of people in Columbus, Ohio watched. I came at them thick and fast yesterday, so they're very excited about it. I had people email me stuff, text me stuff early in the morning, and so I know that it was big. I watched it last night. Did you get a chance to watch it, Schlegs?
I did.
Good. We'll dive into that. I'm going to hear your thoughts. But first, I want to give everybody an update, because I promised yesterday, Schlegs, that I was going to be heading to the BMV. Did that, executed at a high level, took care of everything, got it all in. I was like in and out in probably 35 minutes, and half of that was at the counter, so I didn't have to wait very long. And then after that, in this crazy heat advisory that we live in now, where like everything is breaking news, everything's a headline, everything's the worst, you know, just trying to terrorize the folks. We want to live for some reason now in a perpetual state of fear. That's what the media and that's what folks want to feed you. I'm going to tell you, let's be a bastion of hope. Let's be a lighthouse in the storm. They said there wasn't a good idea to practice yesterday in pads. I said, Schlegs, you know what? It's the same temperature in Dallas, Texas, as it is in Columbus, Ohio. Similar humidity, very similar conditions, maybe more of a breeze up here. And so yesterday, I got our old gray sweats from Ohio State. I strapped them on. I put them on one leg at a time, put the sweatshirt on, strapped on some old shoulder pads. I might even go get them out here for the next segment and put them on. Put on my Dallas Cowboys helmet, the one that you can see right behind me there. I pulled that off the shelf. And I wore those sweats with shoulder pads, which the shoulder pads was a new touch. I've never done that before. But I wanted to really recreate the environment the players would be in. And then I wore that helmet, and I wore all that stuff for a good hour and a half. Got a nice lather going. I only drank half the water I brought. I was fine. I jogged around there and was okay. But I mean, we've just decided like we're going to soften kids to the point that we want to turn them into like Kobe beef. And I had to tell them, like, guys, your mom's job is to love you, is to care for you, is to look out for you. Dad's job, coach's job is to let you know how tough you can be. And then we're going to have to push through some things. And so like, we're going to have to grind a little bit, you know, the hotter the fire, the stronger the steel. Like we got to go forge that. And so we're going to do it in a safe and responsible way. We're going to have plenty of water breaks and make sure everybody's all right. But we went helmets only. Thursday, it's a full pads deal. Talk to the other coaches. We're going to be fine. I know it's going to be hot. It's 6 o'clock at night. We're on grass. We're not on turf. It'll be okay. And we'll make sure we'll look after you like the care of our own children, because half of you guys are our own children. And we want to make sure that everybody's going to be okay while trying to callous you a little bit, trying to make you a little bit tougher. That's what you got to do when you train, Schlegs. You know that. You know, you got to press. Ryan Hawk had this great one, AJ's brother. You got to press the edges, squeeze the edges. That's the only way you can grow is by squeezing the edges. And so if you do that, you'll be able to grow. I think I grew a little bit last night, and I feel good about that situation.
I'm happy that you grew. My question is, when you put the shoulder pads on, did you also have a jersey on top of the shoulder pads, or just shoulder pads out?
No, I couldn't find a practice jersey. I wasn't about to wear like a game jersey out there.
That would have been amazing. I mean, why not?
I know.
So when you were in that mix, though, like, did you guys work on like form tackling and let them tackle you? Because that seems like something that could have definitely happened.
It could have. We got out and we drove some of the pads. I go, we can work on blocking still. We could have maybe done tackling. The problem is, the ground's pretty hard. And so I'm not going to make you guys dive on the ground without pads on. That's ridiculous. I go, but we're going to work on some tackling. We're going to move around. And we did like 3 conditioning drills, like 3 minutes a piece at the end, like a little box drill, back pedal shuffle, sprint, shuffle, a little bag drill, and then like a pro agility competition, like 3 to 4 minutes each one, like 10 minutes. And Some guys are like, oh, it's so tired. I'm like, good. That's okay. It's good to get a little tired. It's good to feel a little strained. Get some water, go home, get some rest tonight, and we're going to feel good. We're going to grow a little bit.
Some of the things that I really enjoy doing in training is when you add in those hard implements at the end. And the beautiful thing was, finishers are great, but also, you know, Ohio State, I got this from Urban and Mick, but like a lot of the conditioning happened at the beginning of practice so that you could go out there and execute while you are fatigued. And that's kind of the point too, right? Conditioning makes cowards of us all. No greater sport than wrestling to be able to validate that point. But still, also in football or even in the weight room, being able to go out there, do some things, coaches get them. And then, I want to see if you can actually not necessarily run the play, but can you, for that age population, side nugget, fun little drill, have them do something like that where they are out of breath. Then come back and say, hey, we're going to go on 2, like all the plays. Can you hold your water? Can you think about your assignment, right? You know, is it gap man read, right? Or reach, right? Like what is it on the offensive line that you're supposed to be doing? Can you still execute when you are fatigued? That's the game of football. There's going to be long drives, both offense and defense. You got to work those in while also sticking with the fundamentals. Some things you can't play around with, Bob. This happened to me yesterday because I was running my kids' Hunter's high school baseball team, lightning. So I'm like, I can't do nothing about that. So
I've never seen anybody get struck by lightning. People have talked about this for years.
But school limits. Well, you know what we did?
I've been a lifeguard, man. I've never seen anybody outside of the dude in Caddyshack. I've never seen anybody get struck by lightning.
It's just one of those things but then you got to adapt. So I just had them doing some stuff, whenever they're undercover. And then when we went out, they were already ready to go. Like I just eliminated some of the wait time. But
how about this?
Anyways, it was great.
Do you know what a lightning rod is? Have you ever heard of the term lightning rod?
Yeah.
Like people say lightning rod of criticism. It's someone who's always, attracting unwanted attention. Well, they used to have lightning rods in buildings so you don't strike the building and it runs all the way down unfettered to the ground and it grounds the lightning should it strike the building. You could have been that for your team. We could have got you out there with a nice 3-iron, maybe some sort of pole. You could have held that bad boy up and you could have been like, bring it to me. Lord, if you're going to strike, let it be me. I've got the mass. I have the girth. I can hold this. I will be able to handle and just drive it into the ground. Drive it into the ground, Schlegs. I think you could do it.
Gas station ready. As the shirt says, Waffle House ready today. I know for a fact some of those people that are working at Waffle House could be a lightning rod. But I'm happy that the kids had a good practice, Bob.
They did. I'm happy you got it done in the lightning. I saw that. I looked at the weather in Jayville, and I'm like, man, not really comparable to Ohio. We got some storms on the forecast, a little bit cooler, a little humidity. So a little different. So I went to Dallas. That worked for sure. Lightning rod of criticism now, Connor Stalions. You got to watch the Wild Stallion documentary last night. We'll call it,
it's called Sign Stealer.
Yeah, the Sign Stealer. It's a documentary, in name only. It was very one-sided, but there was factual elements that they did admit to the cheating, to him paying people. There were dollars spent from him, 2 tickets, video capture of games of other people there. The guy can remember basically the ASL of football signs, but yet couldn't recall where he was at the night of that Central Michigan game. What are your thoughts?
Well, and the Barstool guy, El Presidente, Dave, said, yeah, of course that was him. He didn't necessarily answer it. And when you go through, I thought they did a good job of explaining what the rules are of sign stealing. And I like to hear that there was an underground. There was a couple of takeaways from it. I like to hear that there was an underground, football analyst thing where, like, even in the shot, like he threw his hood up, like they're going and meeting in a dark alley and they're swapping signals and they're talking about games and how can we trade things like back in the day, right? You traded film that way. And the reason like this kind of came about in this particular rule of advanced scouting was because we have tape now that's readily available to everybody. And so the rule in question is not the sign stealing and being able to decipher what they can do on the field, because that does happen. You and I have talked about it at length. We're sitting there, and every time a quarterback makes a certain check or a center says something, or like you get a read, or he does a hand signal to a wide receiver that's a screen, or that's the hot guy or whatever, you pick those things up along with hey, what's the depth on a running back? Hey, look at the guard, how he's cheating up here to get a B-block to go to the mic. Like, you read all those things, you study all those things. That's what helps give you a competitive advantage. And also, I'm going to mention his last name, but when I watched that documentary, he reminded me of a guy that we both know and care about named Craig. Starts with last name, starts with the M. And immediately my face just lit up and I just started smiling. Very similar. But this guy had a high GSF. Like, he just walked in. How can I help you in Naval Academy football? Awesome.
Service. Leader.
Right? Like, this dude had a high GSF. He was extremely smart. To be able to memorize all those things requires a high GSF. He slept in the car. He's doing everything. He wants to be a coach. Like, I totally get it. And I applaud him for doing those things. But it goes back to the thing that's in question here is the advanced scouting on the sideline for signals. And the question would be, if you got all of that from the tape, the TV copies, which he did, right, show that he was getting a lot of those from TV copies, then why even advanced scout for those, right, when I can get it off of the TV copy? That's really was my question, which goes into the point of, do we not necessarily like the rules? Yeah, but are they the rules? Yeah. And the advanced scouting one was the one that they were questioning, and also paying other people. And he said, hey, I bought and sold tickets. My mom went to games. My friends went to games. Totally get that. But then you have to question, how is he paying for those with his limited staff salary? I don't know. Those are the things that you take into question. One thing I don't take into question is his GSF for Michigan. So, I like what he said too. In a cat and mouse game, how do we be the cat? Like, dudes they're looking for a competitive advantage, just like everybody else should.
That's a good line. It was a great line.
I did. I'm like, how do we be the cat? I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Hey, I think they wanted to paint him a little bit as a sympathetic figure in there, and I think they did a pretty good job of it. And the fact that they've been shooting this documentary, Schlegs, since the national championship, I mean, they're videoing him as he's walking into the game. I mean, this has been in the works for 8-9 months. So I think Netflix was on this. They knew what was going on. They understood it. I mean, I don't know what Stalions does from here. Like, if he wants to get into coaching, like he's
coaching high school. One thing that I think I initially had was that everybody knew that potentially he was getting this stuff illegally or on the side. And, I started thinking about like the players in this, and now they had a great kind of the linebacker for that season had just great dialogue about like, they're just going out there and playing. Like, they don't know, like they're like, hey, this guy knows what's going on. He's giving us tendencies, because we all have analysts that are like able to help. Right. And hey man, he's saying it's a run. We're all going, it's a run. Right. Cause that's the guy that does it. Not necessarily knowing.
Right, a lot.
That dude be right. He's like, how often are you right? Well, I'm very rarely wrong. Right. So I'll take that. But so the whole premise goes back into the means in which he obtained the information.
Absolutely. Hey,
and I don't know.
Oh, he conveniently forgot some things. We'll get into a little more about some of the people they talk. They never really had any Ohio State side, except for that crazy dude with the mask on, looking like our friend AJ on a Saturday night in his house. So outside of that, we'll have to dive into it. But Joshua Perry, I guarantee you he's got some thoughts on this. He's going to join the program next.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yep.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel just... Oh, here's our guy, Mr. Joshua Perry. And Joshua, we're going to start out with this. I feel like you probably had a chance to see the documentary, did you not?
Watched it last night.
Like many folks out there. And in seeing it, what were your initial thoughts?
I agree with you. It was certainly, it felt like a fluff piece. They tried to make Stalions look like a victim maybe in this situation. It was unique watching it because he basically has this mentality where it's like, oh, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. Like, I didn't even need the stuff that they were sending me. I had a whole system, walks us through it. Pretty intricate. Got to give him a lot of credit for it. But then he's sitting down there with the NCAA, and that was the craziest part where they're asking him the questions. And then finally it gets to the one about the Central Michigan sideline. I do not recall. I understand. I've been deposed before, so I understand how these things work. When you sit down, the lawyers are telling you, like, you know, if there's a question that maybe you don't want to answer, I do not recall is what you say, because it's not an admission one way or the other. It's just I don't remember it, and they can't really try you on that. How do you not remember one way or the other if you were at an opposing team's football game or not on the sidelines? Like, that was the crazy part. So certainly interesting to watch. There was nothing that was like a bombshell for me. So we'll wait and see how the rest of this unfolds. But he's an interesting dude, man. Like, you give him credit for the work that he put in, but also kind of nuts. Like, he's a real life nut job.
So my kids were watching this and we're watching all together. Like, Dad, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, this is what was going on last year. We were talking about it. And then my son, Cullen, and I don't know if this is a product of environment and what we're creating at the house, maybe just what he's seeing, what he learns at school. But he goes, hey, does Ohio State have a guy like that? Who's our guy doing this stuff? And I was like, buddy, we're focusing on all the wrong things here.
You want to know, though, right? Like, I mean, he talked about this vast underground network of analysts who trade informations back and forth throughout the week. Interestingly enough, he was like, we must have been at the bottom of the totem pole because there was no network at Michigan. Nobody was doing that. And somebody finally reached out and we figured out a way to do it. So I think Cullen was probably on the right track. He's saying that everybody's got a guy. Like, who would that guy be?
Yeah, I don't know who that guy would be. I'm trying to go through the staff and look for tendencies that would match Connor Stalions in their building, and I don't really know. One thing too, Joshua, is we go through the rules that we always talk about, and I'm on your approach on this. Like, I'm kind of so tired of dealing with it, and yeah, I am 100% biased because I'm an Ohio State fan and Ohio State alum, and I can't stand watching that team win. And you know what? Honestly, they had a really good team last year, and they did what they had to do when this all erupted. They just continued to win, right? But I will say this, and I wanted your take on it. When in terms of the rules, like, are you just ready for the NCAA to come out with just like, because I think that's where we're really getting the weeds of this, right? Like the dialogue, the technology, and we haven't even talked about all the other things of a coach being, investigated by the FBI and computers being taken away. Like that totally got taken off the board, and somebody that potentially was a sexual predator that was on the staff, that nobody has talked about that. Right. So there's a lot of other things that I think are going to be coming out about Michigan and their football state.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I don't necessarily want to get into like rumor and innuendo. I do think there are a lot of questions about that program that are going on. It was interesting because Ward Manuel addressed the media today, I believe, and was, asked essentially about the notice of allegations that was sent. And for a while it was bet and it was, we're going to fight and, all this other stuff. And he basically got to the point where he's like, yeah, we're going to cooperate and we're going to work with the NCAA on this. And I'm just wondering, like, how did you get to the point where it was we're suing the pants off of everybody, and now it's like, yeah, we kind of got to do the deal? And I think there were a lot of questions that were asked in that documentary that were legitimate questions. Like, I understand Jim Harbaugh's desire to go back to the NFL. Timing seems perfect to get out of college ball with all the, not just the sign stealing, but I mean, the recruiting violations. Like, nobody's really talking about either. With a lot of people in trouble over the recruiting violations there. A lot of his coaching staff left. And when you leave, those guys don't necessarily have to cooperate if they don't think that they're going to get back into coaching college football. It's a unique thing there. Certainly it's not over, but I'm curious to see how it ends.
So obviously, Joshua, they came out and Dave Portnoy was like, yeah, he told me he was at the game. Like, obviously they were having people scout the signs of future and videotaping stuff on the from the stands, and because everything else is legal. It's just, hey, how much time did he put into it? I'll give Connor Stalions this. Like, he was very, very good at his job. Like, he's a smart guy. He just took it like a step too far to help probably fill in some of the gaps, because people are like, why would they do that if they had it on TV? I'm like, well, you can probably get 90% of what you need, but you need the other 10% to be able to have like a continuous action to know every single thing. And so there's a lot of other allegations and things they're diving into. We won't speculate on that. Just based upon what you've seen. Joshua, we've seen these penalties now handed down for the last 20 years. I mean, you were coming into Ohio State and you were part of the punishment of something that you weren't even a part of. Like, what is an adequate punishment? What does that look like in your eyes for Michigan based upon what is, in theory, pretty common knowledge now?
I think the NCAA has gotten away from, postseason bans for the right reasons. Like, I was punished and we went 12-0 that year for something I had nothing to do with. And so I think they're trying to avoid those situations, which is right. I think it should be on the table. Certainly. People have talked about vacating wins. I think that's a really tough thing to do, because the question that I do ask, even though they did break rules, we've seen vacating wins in situations where ineligible players who would have been ineligible were out there playing. And I don't think that was the case here. The other question that you ask, and I do think it impacts the game, but how much does it impact to say, like, emphatically, you want to vacate wins? I think the NCAA is after some money in this scenario. Certainly some coaching suspensions will probably come down, things of that nature. I don't think they're going to do anything that's going to be overly punitive to the current players on the roster.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up the Connor Stalions stuff. Joshua's going to hang around with us for one more segment. We start diving into the games this week. He'll be on the desk Saturday night for NBC. Big Ten's got some nice ones. There were some great ones around college football. Here are his thoughts next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, we're finally here to game week. We've got our guy Joshua Perry on the NBC desk. Josh, you may ask why I have pads on. Well, yesterday, to talk about the heat and everything that was going on, I wore some sweatpants, sweatshirt, underneath the pads, put the pads on, the Cowboys helmet behind me to demonstrate to the young folks out there, the kids who we were coaching, that, hey, guys, I know it's hot. We're going to get some water. You're going to be fine. You know, it was a process of kind of callousing your mind and your body, of working through some things. So I wanted to prove to them and be an example that you can survive in this little heat wave we're having in the north, because guys playing it all the time in the South.
You're sick, first off, for going to those lengths. The other thing, too, is that was a move where you had to be very careful, because that could have backfired on you. You could have fallen out in the sun, Bob, and they had to douse you down with some water, get the paramedics out there. That could have really gone south on you.
It could have, but I think I know myself. I mean, I still condition. I wear sweat. I used to never be a big sweater. Now I have to sweat in order to work out, because I'm like an old car. Like, I need all the joints lubricated, feeling good, back engaged, like hamstrings fully warmed up, knees going. So yeah, I like to sweat a lot when I work out. So I knew I'd be able to like handle this and feel good in it. But I did have a good sweat and a good lathers. It's like pouring down my face as I was yelling at the kids. We got a nice little slate though of games on Thursday night. Now there's 21 of them. I don't know if we necessarily need that many. But there is a nice little Big Ten game that we're going to see on Thursday night between North Carolina at Minnesota. I feel like that's kind of a sneaky good game that nobody's talking about.
Yeah, and I think Minnesota started off that game favored. They had some injuries in training camp. I think the running back Taylor, one of their returning wide receivers, were busted up. So the line on that one flipped. PJ Fleck is in an interesting situation because he's so old school that he hasn't embraced the new way of football, which is perfectly fine. But I think you have to have results. And I think people up there are starting to get antsy. Similar thing for Mac Brown. I think people might be getting antsy there as well. And you had 2 quarterbacks that were NFL draft picks. Now you got a new guy who's going to be under center there. I think there's some intrigue to this football game for sure.
Yeah, you also have Rutgers playing. You have – who else is playing that night? You have Rutgers. You have Illinois playing. And again, we talked about Rutgers, how they don't play anybody. In Illinois Thursday night, what are you thinking about – we've talked about Rutgers, but what about Illinois? Illinois has the opportunity to be pretty decent this year too.
I think they can be solid this year. It's unique because they had that great season a couple years ago, and then last year was a little bit of a question mark. I think they've got to regroup and figure out what they are from an identity standpoint. I truly do think Ryan Walters not being their defensive coordinator was a little bit of a point of growth for them last year. They had to get over that and the fact that they lost so many NFL players. I think Brett Bielema is one of the sharpest coaches in the Big Ten. I've been inside his program, sat in his meetings with him. He's super organized. He understands how to teach. But it's a matter now of really developing players, right? Like they got to get guys who aren't the top recruits to play like some of the best in the country. And that's always a challenge. So they're going to need to start fast this year, but I believe in Brett.
So 2 big games, I think two of the biggest games on the schedule. Pat McAfee is going to be in Morgantown, his alma mater. I think our guy AJ will be out there as well with him for Penn State, traveling down to Morgantown. A better game last year than I think what people believed it would be. And I think they're going to be fired up. Morgantown is a hostile place. It's an early game, so it's not going to have the frothiness of night. So you have that on one side, and then the other side you have USC, LSU. Which one of those games do you think is bigger for the Big Ten?
Oh, man. I think people view Penn State as a CFP team, so it's probably a bigger one. And it's not to say they won't make it to the CFP if they don't win that game, but I think they do have to start off right. West Virginia, that it's going to be tricky because they have a veteran quarterback that's returning. They've got a defense that made some upgrades in the portal, and last year they were extremely aggressive. They did a great job of getting sacks and creating TFLs. And I'm looking at Penn State's offense right now. Don't know where the wide receiver production's coming from. Drew Aller's got to be much better, and they've got a new offensive coordinator who came over from Kansas, and Kotelnicki, who I think is a good coordinator, but certainly growing pains. James Franklin likes to have his hand in the things there. So I think that's a bigger game long-term, but USC and LSU, I think that's going to be a fantastic watch this weekend.
Yeah, you got Julian Fleming up there now at Penn State, and I'm with you. I'm excited to watch West Virginia because West Virginia seems like they have their stuff together and they come out decently fast. Another one, too, going on Friday. I think it's who's playing Michigan State? FAU, baby.
Tom Herman.
Finding Tom Herman's, right? And, again, that's a big one for Jonathan Smith coming, new coach coming in, MSU, all this stuff with Mel, fresh start. What do you think about those? Because those really matter, the Michigan State game and the Wisconsin game for Fick playing Western Michigan. You got to start off fast.
Yeah, I mean, and Fick's working with a veteran transfer and Tyler Van Dyke as a quarterback, and that position for them last year was not what they expected it to be with Tanner Mordecai. They've got to get better on offense. When I talked to Coach Fick over the summer, too, he mentioned some of the growing pains last year, even to the point of maybe a little bit of selfishness creeping in. They've got to make sure that they're united as a team, and I think that he's going to have that right. No doubt. For Michigan State, the tricky part is I think that this is not the year that they take the step, even though they've got Aiden Childs at quarterback. You talked about Jonathan Smith. I think he's a fantastic coach. They've got to get better in the trenches. Florida Atlantic thinks that they can win this football game, and that's dangerous. When you got the team who's the group of 5 school, they're coming on the road. They're playing a big brand opponent, and they have belief that they can win. You've got to make sure that you jump on them early.
All right, I got a couple more quick ones before we get you out of here, Joshua. I mean, you've got games on Sunday night and Monday night being Labor Day week, which is fantastic. is there something you think on Saturday night when you're sitting there at the desk that you'll be surprised to talk about? Is there any upsets in the making? Is there a game you think could be closer than not, or a game that you have particular interest in, across all of Saturday's games?
Depending on what Michigan's offense looks like, I do think that their game against Fresno State could be a little bit closer than people anticipate. I think Fresno State has to be better on defense than they were a year ago, certainly, and they're going to have their hands full trying to block Michigan's guys. But offensively, they've got a quarterback in Mikey Keene who I like. They've got returning production at running back and at wide receiver. I think they're going to be able to move the ball just a little bit, and Michigan has to have answers offensively. I think their defense will play great, but if the offense is stagnant or maybe they're trying to flip-flop between quarterbacks, now you might get yourself into a little bit of trouble in your home opener.
My dog has a new podcast, Rushing the Field. Talk about it, bro.
Yeah, we're covering college football nationally. Our first episode is going to drop tomorrow. Fantastic stuff we got coming for you. Nicole Auerbach has been amazing. If you watch the Connor Stalions documentary, she was in there because she's on top of everything news-wise. But we're super excited everywhere you can get podcasts.
Fantastic. And then lastly, we have not asked you about the Ohio State-Akron game. Obviously, it's a big line, 50-point spread. Ohio State should be covering that easily. Is there anything particular that you're looking for that you would like to see to feel better about the Buckeyes heading into week 2?
Defense needs takeaways. They need TFLs. They need sacks. It wasn't something that they did at a high level last year, even though they were a good defense. I want to see that. Jeremiah Smith, can't wait to see him. Ohio State winning that game by 70.
All right, perfect. We appreciate your time, Joshua. I can't wait to dive in that new pass. Check it out, Rush the Field. Joshua Perry, Nicole Auerbach going to be there. And you can see him also Saturday nights on NBC with all the Big Ten coverage. We appreciate it. All right, coming up next, we've got some headlines. Stay tuned right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, now we get to welcome in our headlines. They're brought to you by our friends at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they offer you personalized treatment plans to help you feel better, whether it's you're struggling with weight loss, low energy, loss of sleep, muscle loss, whatever it may be, they can help you with everything. Affinity Whole Health provides expert guidance to help guide you to safely reach those goals. And I would know, I've been a patient for 7 years. They've done a fantastic job with me. They have all of Ohio covered, offices in Cleveland and in Columbus. Don't wait any longer. Set up your free consult by going to affinitywholehealth.com. That's affinitywholehealth.com. All right. Now for some of the headline Schlags. You've been dying to get into some of these games. You want to preview some of these games that are going to be here and be here before you know it, when you start looking around. So you've got the Colorado Buffaloes. You'll be taking on North Dakota State. Colorado's favored by almost 10 points. This feels like it could be a little bit of a trap, though, for your guy Deion Sanders.
It could be. Again, they started off hot last year. They've been kicking people out. I understand trying to control the narrative. We talked about it a couple of days ago. I think it was yesterday with Bill Bender. But really, you want to come out starting out fast. You got two guys that are potentially up for the Heisman. People are putting money on them. And his son, the quarterback Stroud and Travis Hunter. They got dudes. They've went into the portal. We want to see what year 2 looks like. And I like a lot of – the thing about Deion is I like a lot of the things that Coach Prime does off the field, right? But you still got to go handle business on the field. And that's what we got to see for Colorado, man. It's a game that's won and lost on the football field. I want to see what they can do. North Dakota State, always one of the stronger teams in FCS. They're going to be disciplined. We just saw one beat, New Mexico. I think that was Montana State. Not necessarily Colorado should be the Lobos, right? We think they should have a better performance. But again, we want to see how, more importantly for Colorado, how does the offensive defensive line look? Because in the Big 12, you got to be able to win up front.
Well, and one of the things also you pointed out there, Colorado is more talented than North Dakota State. Like, let's get that done straight away. However, when you think about it, North Dakota State is probably the better football actual team. Now, are they going to win this game? I don't know. But I think it's a lot more even than what people think. And if it's a game that gets close in the fourth quarter, North Dakota State is used to winning. Their guys play together. They play hard. They're a team. They don't have any illusions of grandeur when it comes to individual players. Like, they operate as one unit, and they've had a lot of success doing that. And so I look at this and like, man, for Deion's sake, I think this could be closer than he believes. I think they're going to try to put a lot of pressure on Shedeur. They'll probably double, Travis Hunter, try to take him out of it, and they'll force them to try to run the football and get things done another way. We talked a little bit about Minnesota and North Carolina. Minnesota was favored, as Joshua was saying. Now North Carolina is the favorite in that. I'm kind of excited to see that game. Now, there's not going to be really like any CFP implications, but I think it could be a big one for the Big Ten. Both of these teams are kind of in the middle tier of their conference, and both have had success recently. PJ Fleck's been there for a while. It feels like if he's going to have the type of year that he wants to have, this is a game that they need to win.
And really now in the Big Ten being expanded, like, what does that year actually look like? Can you be 8-4? Can you row the boats upstream a little bit, 8-4, everybody going in the same direction? But you could very easily be 4-8. I think what we're starting to see in this new expansion era is like there's the halves, like that top part, but then there's a lot of parity in there. And you got to remain healthy. So in this game, I've always liked Mac Brown as a coach, but he's coming into a new quarterback. Minnesota, new quarterback, game one, week one. What's going to happen? It's got to play out, but it's critical for the Big Ten, meaning for PJ Fleck, that he gets off to a hot start, gets this game. I think it's like a 1.5.
Yeah, it's a tight one right there for him. So going to be a good one. And that game is in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. Schlegs, am I correct in saying that?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it is too.
Okay. Cricket said we got some other big games on Thursday night. 4 other ranked teams are going to be in action. Western Carolina at NC State, Murray State at Missouri, Linwood at Kansas, and then Southern Utah at the Utes. None of those games, Schlegs, have lines inside of 30. I don't anticipate any of them to be very good. We've got some robust games on the schedule, big-time matchups. We've got a bunch of ranked teams versus mid-majors. And then we've got like a couple of those Minnesota, North Carolina games, which those are the ones that I kind of look forward to. I don't really need to see a lot of blowouts right now. Anything else? I mean, there's 21 games on Thursday night, which Schlegs is absolutely crazy. I feel like that's probably – check that. I feel like that is too many, minus the probably. You don't need that many games on Thursday night, especially opening weekend. I guess some football is always better. More football is always better than just none. But at some point, man, should there be some sort of process of keeping that day a little bit sacred on Thursday night to keep some of the big games on there?
Well, I mean, it's just money, man. There's local markets. People want to see their teams. And honestly, it kind of helps, to be quite frank, the teams that are playing earlier, because they get an extra couple of days getting ready for week 2 when you really think about it, because you came out of camp, you're already kind of ready to go. You give the guys a couple of days. Now you're back, and you can extend that, right? You can break that whenever you want to. So they got to play them anyways. They're not that difficult a game, so it just gives you an extra couple of days to recover, to get ready for week 2 and watch some more film and actually enjoy a Saturday before you really get into the slate of it. So I kind of like it. But again, I'm going to be watching that Colorado one and the Minnesota one. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to get a quick little break here. Coming back, we're going to dive in. We got some comments.
Ooh, I like these.
He's been throwing in the YouTube chat over the last couple of days. Get some of those answered. Like I said, please make sure you give us a follow, like, subscribe. Keep throwing it out there as we continue to grow this thing. If you're watching on Bally's each and every day, we appreciate that as well. But coming up, we're going to do that. And we're going to dive in. So it's the Big Ten tiebreaker. when it comes down to who is going to be in the Big Ten championship game. Remember, there is no more East versus West. There is no divisions. It's divisionless. 2 best teams go. There's a lot of teams. Well, what if they're a tie? Find out next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
Welcome back into the program here. Get some questions. Throw them out there, and then we're going to talk too about the Big Ten tiebreaker and what that ultimately looks like. Someone asked a couple days back, Schlegs, is it true that Bobby once bowled a 240? You responded to him, I could see it, and then you humble bragged like I bowled a 279. I've never bowled a 240. I have broke 200 before, and that was like in my peak bowling days, Schlegs, back when we were like rolling in college. And, when you have 6 a.m.s and stuff and you're not trying to go out and drink during the week, like what do? You bowl and drink a lot of waters. Kind of boring, but, that was when I was at my best being able to do it. Another question here coming at you, following on the D line, looks discussion. Could we see some exotic 3-4 looks? I think there might be a little more versatility in the defense this year up front, as far as you've got a lot of linebackers they can play. You got a lot of secondary. You've got some versatility with some of your defensive ends and ability to stand them up. So I think, Schlegs, there might be more diversity, if you will, in some of the fronts and things that you're seeing relative to what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and why would you see that? 1, guys are comfortable in the system. 2, you got the personnel to be able to do it. And so I think predicated upon the offensive style that we're playing, you could definitely see that. Jack can stand up. JT can stand up. You got a guy, Mitch Milton, he can stand up for sure. He played linebacker, right? You also got a Veli who could go out there on the edge. CJ Hicks could, one of the best blitzing linebackers that we got. Again, it's about personnel and it's about matchups, and you don't mind being able to do that, but you can only do that if the guys have the football IQ to be able to do it.
A lot of stuff, Schlegs' response to the Connor Stalions, like what we think should happen. I mean, what's a penalty that you could craft that you think would be appropriate for the current situation?
I'm absolutely terrible about it because I don't have all the facts, and I don't like to give opinions when you don't have all the facts. I mean,
based upon the fact, let's just say based upon the facts that you kind of know right now.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's hard, man. I'm actually more sympathetic toward the players because Joshua brought up a great point. I went in there. I got my, come up to Ohio State 2011. Then you got 2012 when we're sitting there and can't go to a bowl game. And also remembering like that's right off the cusp of, where they lost all of 2010 season. And I don't want to just jump to conclusions about it and put those guys into that situation. They still won the national championship regardless. They still won all those games regardless. I do think there's a lot of things that I question as to where Harbaugh was in his career versus when Connor Stalions entered his life and completely changed some of those things. But the one thing I never want to do is take away the credit of the players because they didn't know. They're just out there freaking playing. So as a coach and a former player, that's kind of where I stand on it. And I'll let those other people talk about that stuff.
I get it. It makes a lot of sense. I want to hit this real quick. We can get into more a little bit in depth tomorrow. We have some more time. The 6 qualifications about how tiebreakers are going to be used for the Big Ten championship. Because remember, there's no divisions anymore, so it's a lot more complicated. Tied teams will be compared based upon the head-to-head matchup. if applicable during the regular season. Boom. Makes a lot of sense. Tied teams will be then compared based upon record against all common conference opponents. So if you didn't play head-to-head, hey, we were 4-0 against these 4 teams that we both played. You were 3-1. Obviously, the 4-0 team will go. The third, the tied teams will be compared based upon a record against common opponents with the best conference record and proceeding throughout common conference opposition based upon their order of finish within the conference standings. So then you start going through your common opponents and who essentially is ranked higher or lower within the conference. Then they're going to be compared on cumulative their opposition's cumulative winning percentage after that. So you go one more layer. Then finally, the fifth one, a representative will be chosen by the highest ranked sports source analytics team rating score metric following the regular season, which like God knows what the heck that thing looks like.
I don't even know. I just started laughing.
Yeah. And then finally, we're just going to randomly draw it. When I heard the random draw, I thought in my mind, I envisioned my man Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday say when, but it's not that kind of draw. I think it's more of like the random draw, like a coin flip, unfortunately.
I think that wasn't that in Varsity Blues where they go out there and flip the quarter and see you got into the playoffs, right?
It was in Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights. That's what it was. Yeah.
Some big time suspense. So we'll
That's
get into
what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yeah, we'll break that down, some of the craziness going on with that here tomorrow. We're going to wrap up the show, some of the best stuff we got going. Final parting shots from my man Schlegs here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, final segment of the program. Schlegs, do you have any more parting thoughts, if you will, on the controversy that was Connor Stalions that you saw last night? The one thing that I saw is there was really no Ohio State pushback, and they tried to flip it on the Buckeyes at the end. Like, how did you find out that these things were actually illegal? You would have had to obtain it by illegal means. I have no idea how they came about that stuff. But the people that were all doing it, Nicole Auerbach, Rich Eisen, Portnoy's an unabashed Michigan fan and an alum, so everyone knows that. Like Nicole Auerbach and Rich Eisen, they never once put up there. I didn't see that they were both Michigan alum. Like, they make it sound like they're just members of the media that like Michigan. No, they both went to school there as well. Yeah,
my biggest takeaway was the fact that you just saw somebody that had a high GSF that absolutely loved their alma mater, and there's, it's basically goes back, win if you can, cheat if you must, but always win. That's the first thing that popped into my mind when I was watching this thing. Well, the guy was looking for a competitive advantage.
You went to the Air Force Academy. That was your mantra at Air Force. Do you think that's the mantra across all the academies, given that he went to Navy?
That wasn't a mantra. That was just something I remember Coach Bell said, when in terms because we would go through drills, and it's like, no, I'm just going to win this drill. And I knew what the offense was going to do because I've been playing against the option. So, boom, I'm going to shoot my gap. We win, right? Especially when it came down to winner or loser stuff. I'm going to do what I got to do to win. So I take that. My biggest takeaway from the whole thing was I just went back to the players. And again, I know a lot of fans don't necessarily have this perspective because they weren't, one, a former player, or two, actually a former coach of players. And so my biggest thing is I just always go back to them. And I'm not going to necessarily – I truly believe that they did cheat because in the rule book it says you can't advance scout. And he was advanced scouting when he was on Central Michigan sideline. And again, that's against the rule. You're on staff. You can't do that. That's the rule. The severity of the punishment, I don't know. I leave that up. I don't like the NCAA. I think, honestly, we need our own governing body for all of college football. I think college football needs a college football players association. I think all this stuff's going to happen very, very soon. And guess what? We got mics in the helmets now. So it's over.
Got mics in the helmets.
I got no snare in my headphone, Coach. I got no snare in my headphone.
That's
field 8.
From having run
field
that,
3.
It breaks down more than you think. All of Schleg's thoughts will be coming at you here into the future on the Bobby Carpenter Show.